Schedule. Guess when I looked at my questions just now. I'm ready. Just start.
I can't remember them.
Hello, welcome. Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Urban Fantasy panel, where we've got some really great minds that can answer your questions. So start thinking about them now, because I'm going to save a few minutes at the end. And these guys know their stuff. And so we're going to be talking urban fantasy. We're going to have a super fun time. And we're going to learn a lot and really hack into this genre. I am Sarah Noffke. I write urban fantasy primarily. I've also written science fiction, nonfiction. I have over 108 books. And of those, probably 100 have become bestsellers. And I have a book series that is primarily urban fantasy that it has about 70 and does really, really well. It grossed over 7 figures every year for the last 3 for LMBPN. That's why I'm here, and I don't even know if y'all can see me because I'm so short. I'm sorry. Can somebody give me a stool? Okay, that's my introduction, but the rest of the other introductions are so much better. So, will you please?
That cued me up, didn't it?
Yeah, didn't you like that?
Is that on?
I know.
That doesn't sound like it's on. Can you hear me?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so if you will, please introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do and why you're qualified to be up here, because you all are.
I'm Steve Higgs, and I write books.
Oh, shut up. He writes a lot of books. Tell us more.
So I started writing urban fantasy in 2011. I don't think my story is probably that much different to a lot of people. I had an idea in my head and wanted to get it out there into the world, so I started writing that book. It took me 5 years to write. I then tried to get a traditionally published deal and failed miserably, thankfully, because I self-published it, and that was in June of 2017. That series has spawned a further 21 books, and because the books were quite successful, it then spawned 4 spin-off series as like an expanded universe written by other people within the guided set of rules that I've got for that series. I've written a further urban fantasy series, and I've got about another 27 urban fantasy series set in my head, ready to go whenever I actually find 2 minutes to write something. Was that good enough?
I loved it. A+.
A plus.
Steve
I was
is-
shooting for a solid B.
Steve is the real deal, and he is also really nice because you are willing to help people and give advice. And I think that that's really critical, and the other people on this panel do as well. I love when people share because we're all in this together, right?
Yes.
All right. Talia.
Community.
I'm Talia Beckett. I've written 102 books, but actually only 30 of them in urban fantasy, dragon-based. I've been writing since 2007, but it wasn't until 2020 that someone came up to me and said, "You should be writing urban fantasy." And I was like, "But I don't like it. It's all about witches and wizards, and I love dragons and elves and dwarves. I'm a Tolkien girl." And they were like, "Yeah, you know you can write that too?" So I did, and I've never looked back.
Nice.
Hi, I'm R.L. King Robin. I write the Alistair Stone Chronicles series, which is up to 34 books right now, I'm working on book 35. It also has a couple of spin-offs, trilogies that are set in the same world. I started writing my urban fantasy voyage kind of began with the role-playing game Shadowrun. Talk about elves and dwarves and whatnot, and that game is like elves and dwarves and trolls and stuff in cyberpunk. And I played that game since 1989 and wrote a lot of fan fiction for it. And somewhere around 2011, I decided, why can't I just get paid for this stuff? I can leave out the orcs and the trolls and everything and just keep my character, who's a mage, and port him over into the real world and write books about him. And so far, it's been doing pretty well. People seem to like him, so I'm going to keep doing it as long as they keep buying the books.
I'm Mel Todd. I am not making 7 figures yet.
God, I'm not either.
I plan on it soon. Believe it or not, I actually was writing fan fiction, a lot of fan fiction. I love my fan fiction. And one of my friends pinged me back in 2011 and went, "Hey, I just got a contract for original work with Amazon. Have you heard of Amazon? Yeah, apparently they got this thing called 47 North." He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Original? Really? we're talking, I'm thinking about it. Talked to him a few months later. He's like, yeah, I just paid my taxes. And I'm like, yeah. It was more than what I made a year, and I was at 6 figures. So I went, maybe I should write original stuff. I have about 40-some books out. About 20 of them are urban fantasy or urban science fiction. And I kind of feel like the baby up here because I don't have 100+ books out yet. Yeesh, guys.
It's not about the numbers, but I mean, all of you know your craft. And that's the thing that I've found with talking to people about urban fantasy. Because most people don't actually know what it is, and defining the genre is really, really important. Because when you don't actually hit it right, then I think that that's where we can kind of flounder with sales. Because readers, it's like showing up to a French fry restaurant and giving them mashed potatoes. They may freaking love mashed potatoes, but they came for French fries. So what my question to you guys is a very simple one, and maybe in 1 to 2 sentences explain what urban fantasy is to you, and my answer to that is the magic and the mundane. Go.
So
You can
here's
go
the
next.
problem with me. My best-selling urban fantasy series has no magic and no supernatural creatures.
So there's rules you can break.
And you're all thinking, Steve, that's not urban fantasy, you idiot. And you're right. So it's fringe urban fantasy. But essentially what I did with the genre was take all of the rules and just flip them through 180. And what I've got is a paranormal investigator who runs around. So it's basically Scooby-Doo for adults. So all the supernatural creatures and magic are there, but none of it's real. And so you can twist it. But essentially what you say, I mean, urban fantasy, and I've got a pure urban fantasy series, it is the magical living among our human society. Generally set in a large city, and that's what I do. And you get to do really, really cool stuff with it. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is how cool you can be with the characters. And, you know, even something as, you use the word mundane, which I'm going to steal it, like a taxi driver. And it's just somebody gets in a cab, but cabbie's not human. He's something else entirely. And he's using some kind of charm around his neck that alters his appearance so he looks human. That's urban fantasy for me.
I love it. That's a great, and that's the thing, is it makes us all feel like children.
Yes.
You know, because it's the imagination, like what's behind that door. So that's perfect. And then also I just want to add, before Talia answers this question, that there are really no rules. As long as you know them, then you can break them. And Steve is a great example of that. I mean, don't you have a vampire series that doesn't have a vampire?
We do the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, how do you do that?
The book one in that series, it was the #1 vampire thriller on Amazon.com for most of last year, and there's no vampire in it.
But you have to know the rules before you can break them, and you have to know why you're breaking them.
Yeah.
Great example. All right, Talia, what does urban fantasy mean for you? Because I think we talked about how this is something we don't know.
I don't know about everyone here, but sometimes real life is really, really boring. Yeah. And I wanted to write books that took real life, and then one day the main character just found that they weren't boring. They were an elf or a dragon shifter, and they were just suddenly like, okay, magic exists in this world. So I wanted to be like, it could happen to anyone. You could be going around the corner and you could find a dragon egg. You could be walking down the street and suddenly there's a dwarf in front of you. Kind of very Alice in Wonderland, come along for the ride. And then because I'm a really big fight kind of fan and I want to write kick-ass women, loads and loads of really epic fight scenes. That's pretty much my jam.
Nice. All right.
For me, I think the thing I love the most about urban fantasy is the whole concept of the masquerade, the stuff going on that most people just don't see. You know, there's all this stuff going on under the surface, and you can write, you know, you can either write people that when they're discovering it, or you can write people that are part of it, or you can, you know, you can just do whatever. I mean, there's so many wide things you can do with urban fantasy. You can, whatever suits your fancy, really. I mean, I have no vampires. I have very few shifters in my books. I just, you know, that's just not something I'm interested in, but there, you know, there's freedom for everybody to just kind of play in the sandbox in the corner of it that they like.
Nice.
I don't actually think urban fantasy has any rules. mainly because for all you Gen Xers and older out there, Thieves' World is urban fantasy, and that's a hill I'll die on. But I also tend to write the stories where everything's out in the open. Either everybody knows about magic or everybody knows about shifters, and it's 50-50 if the character is magic or a shifter.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing is I think that there's certain things that define the genre, and then there's certain things that, you know, you can do, and it's so much fun that we can do whatever we want. I have a vegan vampire in one of my books, so you can do whatever you want. And that's why y'all are in the right place, because it's the best genre, I really think. But speaking of that, I love to learn from my mistakes. So what is one mistake that you would have said that you made when you started or along the way? I made a really whiny protagonist that complained about their life. And you know what I found out is that my readers don't care. So they want them to suck it up and get into the fight. And that cost me a lot of money. We can start somewhere else if you don't want to always be on the spot.
Yeah, please. I don't have an answer.
Okay, that's okay. Mel's got one.
Because I haven't done anything wrong.
Oh my freaking God. Actually, I can believe it. Okay, Mel, do you have an answer for this? And if you don't have an answer, you can pass.
Yes, I had an answer. If you're writing a long series like me, do yourself a favor. Make sure you keep a really good world Bible, because when you forget something your fans don't,
Yeah.
the number of times I kind of wish that I had just written the entire series first and then published it is immeasurable. Because, so an example, I have this little blurbs at the top of all my chapters that give you information about the rest of the world. And my beta reader is saying, hey, you're saying this in this blurb, but back in book 1, you said it was 1 foot. Here, you're saying it's 150 meters. And I'm like, So I then had to go in and put a retraction in the book that says, hey, because it was like from History of Magic, it literally said in History of Magic edition, whatever, there was a typo that said 1 feet. It actually was supposed to say 150 meters. Because your story evolves, and no matter how good you are, at some point you will do something in book 8 that you said otherwise in book 1.
Good advice. Yeah?
So, now that I've had time
Okay,
to think,
yeah,
I've reflected
all right.
on my previous
You have a
answer.
problem. You've done something wrong.
Well, no, it's on reflection. What I should have done when I wrote my pure urban fantasy series was spend longer establishing how the magic works and have like a cast iron set of rules for that. And I kind of cobbled it along as I was going and changing things around, and not changing things around in a way that would jolt the reader, but it was very much, I wish I'd thought about it for longer in advance and had it all figured out. So because you're going to create this magical system, this is how these things work for your series of books. And you've got to be very clear about that, because you've kind of got to explain it to your reader at an early stage, and then you've got to stick with it. You can't introduce new stuff that contradicts what you've established. And I found myself kind of bound by these are the rules that I've established, and because I hadn't thought long enough about them, and I wanted to change stuff, but it's too late because you've published 5 books.
But then can't you just like magic your way out of it? Like literally say like, oh, that law broke.
I hadn't thought of that.
Because I think that this is a really good point, because when we have magical systems and it's like, well, they have magic, why can't they just defeat the dragon with a spell? So, and I have portal magic, and so they can go anywhere, but that really screws things up when it's like, well, I don't want them to just go anywhere. So it's like, well, they can't go anywhere when there's boundaries around it, you know? So you can always put those in, and you can always change them. That's why Magitech is awesome. Do either one of you have answers?
I think the biggest mistake I made was listening to people that said don't change genre, because a lot of people are like, stick to your lane, stick to your lane, stick to your lane, give it a go. And actually I wasted 60 to 70 books sticking to the wrong genres. And it wasn't until I was like, you know what, this isn't working. I want to try a genre that actually makes me happy and apparently does have a market. And when I hit that intersect of the two, that's when everything was suddenly like, not only am I happier, but I'm selling way more books. So sometimes actually ignoring the advice and trusting your gut.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing is when you like the genre and you like the writing, then it's going to come through and the readers are going to know it. I used to write science fiction very poorly. and they knew it. They were like, that sucks.
I think the biggest mistake I made, because originally I was planning this series as a trilogy. Yeah, that's funny. But anyway, I had the wrong main character. When I wrote it for the first time, because I like to have my mage character be kind of like, almost like a Sherlock Holmes kind of character, where he's revealed by the way other characters see him rather than getting into his mind. So I had the main character be more of kind of the action guy that's learning about the magical world, and he's like the authority, the mysterious mage kind of guy. And that worked for like one book, but I realized that my mage was a lot more interesting than my action guy, so I switched it up and rewrote it and put him as the main character, and that worked out a lot better.
Wow. Yeah, so you have to figure it out along the way, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. If you have an answer for this, I don't know that there is one, but what do you think the hottest trope is in urban fantasy? I mean, dragons are big, right? If I put a dragon on the cover, it sells.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then is it overdone?
I hope not.
I know, right? Shit. I'm screwed. I mean, but, like, I've tried lots of different things. I've tried fairy godmothers. I'm doing witches right now, but then that's a really tough one because I'm killing them, and apparently you can't kill witches because that makes you a witch hunter.
Right. Also, don't kill your animal companions.
Oh,
Right.
No, never kill the
Yeah,
cat.
that's abuse.
Do
Yeah.
not kill the cat.
Do you think that, well, okay, so do you'll have an answer to the tropes. What do you think the biggest trope is?
I'm too busy writing to read them right now.
Same here.
What has worked well for you? What's been your most successful? Vampires?
Magic, open magic systems where you actually have to learn magic.
For me, it's found family, where my main character suddenly finds herself in a new family world and finds all the people she was missing from a previous world.
Yeah. So do you orphan them from the beginning?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, dead parents. That's where you start, right? No parents. Steve, you look like you're thinking.
Yeah, I am thinking. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer.
You can come back to it.
Sure.
Here's another question, going off script. When you mentioned the animal companions, I have found that my readers care more about the damn cat than and the squirrel, the freaking dragon, than they care about. I mean, I could kill the character. They don't give a shit. And I did kill the cat one time. But he had 100 lives, so he came back. So do you find that you have to have an animal companion in order to be successful?
No.
No.
No. But
It definitely
having those
helps.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an outlier trope.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not necessary, but it certainly doesn't do any harm. And I think you can have a lot of fun with them.
Yeah.
But they're a source of humour.
Yeah, I was going to say they provide comic relief in a tough moment. You can just be like, I know your animal companion
Especially
does
if you-
something crazy, like you have a tiny dragon peeing in a toilet.
Yeah, exactly. Because they can be rude. You can have a sweary unicorn or something.
I have a dragon that fat shames my protagonist.
There you go.
But he can get away with it because he's like, I'm fucking gigantic. Like, come on. Obviously, I have my own issues. Mel, you have an answer for this?
I do too.
I don't think you have to have an animal companion, but if you do, make sure that the companion is a character in their own right, not just oh yes, and then there's my cat.
Great
I
point.
mean, most of the time, my animal companions tend to take over the story if you're not very, very, very careful.
Yeah, I have a cat in my story. The main character got a cat, and through events in the story, he ended up with this cat in book 9. And the books go in relatively real time, so I'm starting to realize, oh my God, the cat's starting to get a little old. So, what's going to happen? We're either going to have this cat that's super old, or I'm going to have to do something. So I did something to basically change the cat into a supernatural cat. So he's going to be around forever.
Save the cat.
Yes.
Okay, so what would you say would be your best advice for a newcomer to this genre? Because I literally wrote 50 books before I made it. And I'm still trying to make it because this genre changes. So if you could help anybody to shortcut their way to success, do you have any advice?
I don't know if it's good advice or not, but it's what I do. Write what you love, write what you want to read, because if you're, I mean, I guess chasing tropes, it might be a good way to be successful, but it never works for me. I readers will see your passion for what you're writing and that you love what you're doing and you're not just kind of doing it because everybody else is doing it. And I think that's one way to be at least moderately successful.
Good. Yeah, Mel, you have one?
Mine would be more like, you don't have to. Okay, one of the things I try to talk to new writers about is genre is marketing. Don't think about genre when you're writing. Think about the story. So, for example, everybody always says, oh, you have to have a romance storyline. No, actually you don't. None of my books under Mel Todd have a romance storyline that helps move the plot forward. I have found family. I have people trying to kill them. I have lots of other things. But you don't have to do it exactly the way somebody else has. If you want to write shifter books, you don't have to pull Patricia Briggs' books and then go, oh, this is how she does it. Do something different. Do it the way you want it done. And don't let somebody tell you, oh, for a story to be urban fantasy, it has to have this stuff. No, it can have new stuff that readers have never seen before, and that's actually what they want, is something new and different. If they wanted Patricia Briggs, they would read Patricia Briggs. Give them you.
Yeah, I like it. So, I mean, be true to yourself. Don't write romance just because you think it's going to sell. Talia, do you have
Yeah,
a...
pretty much exactly that. You have an idea of what excites you and what makes you think this would be a great, fantastical element, this creature, this magic system, whatever. Roll with it. Trust your excitement about whatever way you want to modify the real world, and then put it in the real world and have fun.
Urban fantasy's got a lot of breadth, shall we say?
Yeah.
So, I write all slaying, no laying. There's no sex in my books. There's no real romance subplot or anything like that going on. But some of the best sellers in urban fantasy are actually quite spicy.
Yeah.
K.F. Breen is a big name in the genre, and her books are quite spicy. And there's you need. My advice would be decide what it is that you want to write from the breadth of urban fantasy that's out there. So you've got one end of the scale to the other. Some of the best sellers are quite spicy, so you're almost now in the erotic area, and I don't see that as urban fantasy, but they serve it in an urban fantasy environment. So go and read a few of the books, possibly, and decide where it is that you want to hang your hat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a really important question for new authors and myself. So where are you finding new readers? And is there a ceiling for urban fantasy? Because I would say that, there are limited people that want to read things that are not romantic or I don't have violence or anything in my books. So where are you finding new readers? And do you think there's a lot of them out there?
I'm a bit weird because I live stream my writing on Twitch. So most of my readers come from people just discovering me doing the work live.
I learned that about you in Mallorca. That is so fascinating. Tell us more about it, because it is a really cool thing you do.
Okay, so Twitch is like a streaming platform normally for gamers, but I literally put my writing up on the screen. I put up a little sprint timer, and I have a bunch of writers that write with me, and sometimes I do like a 24-hour stream, and I'm like, okay, you guys are going to support me. And they have like channel point redeems. So if they're watching for long enough, they get rewarded for watching. And they basically like encourage me. So they have a channel point redeem that is like drink water, have a channel point redeem that is like hug one of your teddies, which when you're 18 hours into a 24-hour stream is actually really, really helpful. And they feel like they're then part of the journey. They're invested in your success. They're right there from the beginning of the first draft. And they also do all of my research for me. So if I'm like stuck partway through a book and I'm like, okay, this book's set in the US and I have no idea what this is like in the US because I'm British, I just say, I have no idea. And within about 10 seconds, someone in the chat has gone, this is your answer. And I just get to carry on writing. But then they feel like, I just helped you with your book. I'm so cool. And then they give me money for it. And I'm like, I get to write, you get to pay me, I get encouragement, and I get teddy hugs whenever I need them.
It's mind-blowing. What I think is amazing about that is that I would be, like, they're seeing what you're writing. I would be like, is this, like, good enough? And, like, then you have the judgment, but you must be able to take that filter down.
I've written 100 books at this point. If they're not good enough in the first draft, I'm really doing something wrong.
I love it. I mean, so there's lots of opportunities. So that's how you find new readers. Mel, did you have one?
Well, I think there is a limit right now. I think it's 8 billion. So
Yeah.
that's the number of readers that are possible is 8 billion.
I love it.
New readers, honestly, I still do a lot of newsletter exchanges simply because while I have no doubt that my stuff is good, it's sometimes hard to find things in all of the chaos because there's so much. So the best thing is to hit Sarah up. Hey, I've got a new book coming out. Can you say it? Because then her readers find out about me and vice versa. There's the fact that also a lot of readers will sometimes, all of us have like super fans. I have super fans that have bought my books in every single format. And it's like, okay, you've got it in audio, paper, and hardback. What else am I supposed to do? I don't have time to do graphic novels.
Get on Twitch, apparently. I mean, pay me to drink water. It's amazing. Okay, well, what are you doing to reach new readers?
One of the things that I find successful is I every once in a while I get a BookBub ad. I put my first 4 books in a box set out for 99 cents. And every time I do that, I get a big bump because I have pretty good read-through. So once I get them hooked, I have 34 books out there for them to read. So it's just, I can watch them cycling through. But one of the things I find really encouraging, I heard this somewhere where they were talking about, the Harry Potter books, which are phenomenally successful, have only reached like 1% of the population of the world. Yeah. And she's a billionaire. So I'm thinking, I don't have to do that. I just need to find some tiny percentage of people. And if you like anything, I mean, somebody else out there's going to like it. Roll 34
Aim for
and all
the
that.
stars, 8 billion.
Right.
8 billion. I mean, there's lots of ways. I sold my book to a guy at Trader Joe's the other day. Because when you're enthusiastic, and so he's like checking me out at the cashier, and he's like, "What are you doing today?" And I was like, "I'm going to go work," because I love what I do. It's so freaking fun, right? Because we write urban fantasy. I'm not writing about war and drama and crime. And he was like, "So what do you do?" And I was like, "I write fantasy, and it's freaking awesome." And he was like, I mean, how can he not be like, oh, "Okay, I would like to read that"? And he was like, "Well, where can I find you?" I was like, "Here's my card. There's 8 billion readers." I just have to go to Trader Joe's a lot.
This hat sold me a book through the airport on the way here.
There's ways. There's so many ways. My friends probably hate me.
I was, as I got on the plane to fly here, I handed the stewardess or flight attendant a stack of free audiobook codes to hand out to the other flight crew.
Wow, that's next level.
So I'm like, and I'll do it on the way home. I'm like, "Hey, you guys want some audiobooks?" And just give them the stack because that way they get it free and hopefully get hooked because, the first hit's always free.
I love it. Steve, did you answer? Or did you have one?
I did not answer, but I can. I spend a lot of money. That's how I find new readers. I'm upwards of $500,000 a year on marketing.
Wow. Facebook?
Facebook, Amazon, TikTok. Because urban fantasy, dark fantasy is a crossover. It's somewhere in there, depending on your style that you write. Dark fantasy is more moving towards horror. But I advertise my books on TikTok as dark fantasy, and that works. And so, I'm spending money on pretty much every platform, and I'm doing paid promotions and doing other bits and pieces. So there's lots of readers funneling into the top of the funnel. But what Mel said about author newsletter swaps and stuff, so I reach out to my contemporaries. Brad Magarella, there's a whole stack of people who have books similar to my books. I'm not reaching out to KF Breen because she's writing spicy stuff, which is completely opposite to what I'm writing. But I bumped into Dan Willis yesterday, who writes a very cool series that has been sitting in my also boughts for the last 6 years. And he and I are going to do an author little newsletter swap thing. And I don't doubt that we'll have some crossover stuff there where his fans will pick up my books and my fans will pick up his books. And that doesn't cost us anything, which is cool. That's my favorite price. Free.
Absolutely. And so you're meeting the people here, and it's an easy thing to do, and then we just have to
meeting
do it.
cool people. And the people in the room, if you're writing urban fantasy, you are a cool person. Oh. If you're not writing urban fantasy, you should leave.
Or you should start writing.
Or you should stop. No, kick them out.
I know. Let's just judge people. Okay, I have another question, and then if y'all have questions, you can start lining up, I think, here, because, I mean, I can ask questions all day long, but I think that you guys have probably the best questions. So let's think about our next year, and what are you doing to increase your sales or maintain your success in this ever-changing, growing business where, you know, what I will say about urban fantasy is it is really awesome, but there's a lot of books funneling in, so there's a lot of competition, which is great. So what are you doing?
I'm gonna take what Stephen talked about in his Facebook ads course and try to make it work for me.
Good, yeah. Spend a lot of money.
That's literally the only thing that worries me, and I know this is more of a marketing comment. I don't mind spending the money, but I hate the fact that Amazon doesn't pay me until after the credit cards want to be paid.
Good point. And if you don't have an answer to this question, I understand, because, you know, it's a big one.
I'm going to write more books because more content is always desired. It's one of the reasons I did the expanded universe. So having had a series that was working really well, I knew that I couldn't feed the voracious appetite of the readers fast enough because I was writing other things in other genres. And so I found some very excellent other urban fantasy authors who wrote within my universe and essentially created franchises for my paranormal detective in other cities. And so my series being set in England, I've suddenly now got Boston, Sacramento, Appalachia, and Australia is about to launch. So that is what I am doing to feed the readers, get more readers, move everything forward.
Yeah? How many
lots
books?
of fun. How many books now? I think we counted it last night, and the current count is 18 spin-off books, 22 of mine. And what will we publish next year between us? But somewhere between 10 and 20, I would imagine.
And how many, you say you're going to write more books in order to increase sales, so like what is in 1 year?
For me,
Yeah.
a dozen.
All right, that's a healthy amount.
Yeah, okay. Difficult to know because of lots of other business stuff going on, but potentially and a dozen urban fantasy books on top of whatever else I'm writing.
Yeah, all right, good. So write more books, Facebook
more
ads.
content.
Talia, do you have an answer?
For me, I'm kind of at the point where I'm ready to outsource. I want to be writing, and I want to be giving everyone else all the other tasks. But for me, that also, as Steve said, that includes creating a universe. So I'm spending the next 12 months establishing a proper universe where I can bring in other writers and be like, come play in my playground that I created. Because then you give the readers more of what they love.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say for me, it's write more books. And then I have enough books that I know what the readers have liked the best, and I'm going to go back to dragons because they just freaking love it. I'm also going to do this, I don't know if y'all have heard about it, TikTok. I just like surrendered yesterday. I was like, okay, fine. Because here's my thing, and I would love y'all's perspective on it. I have readers that are about 35 to 65, and a lot of them are retired and older, and I can reach that market really well because they're at home and they're on Facebook. But I'm not reaching that younger market, and I feel like I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm in the Write More Books camp, and I'm also another one who really wants to learn more about TikTok. TikTok's terrifies me, honestly, because every time I try to pull it up, I see, cute girls advertising books with lots of cutesy stuff and stuff scrolling all over the screen. And it's like, I'm too old for this stuff, but I need to learn, because I think you're right that there are younger readers out there to reach, and they're not on Facebook.
I know.
So
we're in the
Facebook's
same
like the
boat.
old people platform now, which is a little disquieting, but
And I
it's
feel
true.
the same way. I was like, I have to put my face where? Like, no.
Just speaking on TikTok for a second, you don't have to appear yourself at any point, especially if your content and your covers are very exciting. I don't appear in my videos very often at all, despite how handsome I am.
And modest, too.
And I outsource the whole thing, so I have somebody that makes all my content. I don't do it myself.
Yes, and the next question would be, because for the longest time I stayed away from it because I thought TikTok was for romance writers, but is there a market for urban fantasy on TikTok? Is it worth our time?
Yes. Is that
Yeah.
a good enough answer? So
I like efficiency.
Adam Beswick, who is writing dark fantasy, it's kind of urban fantasy adjacent. He was, I believe I'm correct in saying, pulling in $30,000 a month just off of 4 books that he'd written by selling them direct through TikTok Shop.
Yeah, I've stalked the hell out of him.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I mean, like, he doesn't even, like, he sees me in the hallway and he just, like, walks the other way. He's like, no. Because he's doing it right. And so, any other answers on the TikTok or any other thing? If y'all have questions, again, I would ask you to come up, but I will keep these guys talking. Go ahead. Yes, please.
You have to go to the microphone.
Microphone, please.
Microphone.
I was just going to say, yeah, I've been playing with it, but I haven't. Since I don't dance, trust me, I don't dance.
Do you have to dance to be on TikTok? Because I will not.
No.
No, you don't have to, but you know,
Steve, you
if
do.
you're really cute and you're dancing, it seems to sell videos. Right now, I'm just playing with it. The biggest issue I have with TikTok is you do have to do your research, and that means I will look up and hours have disappeared, hours I should have been writing.
I know. That's the thing is you don't want to time suck. Okay, please, your question. That's okay. Oops.
Hey
Oh, you're
there.
good.
Thanks for this. I have 2 questions. One, do any of you use the term magical realism in any of your marketing?
Yeah, I do. That's the category that I rank the best in, and that's where I can find new readers because people love magical realism. What about you, Mel? You're saying-
Yeah, I do it all the time because since it is a very true urban fantasy, my magical realism takes place in the fact that, like, if a character has fire magic, they can't just go, oh, fire. They have to actually understand that they're moving the molecules to speed it up so that it ignites, so that the entire purpose of how they learn magic is they have to understand the physics and that they're just using their magic to kick the physics of how atoms and molecules and everything work.
Wonderful explanation. And you have another question.
Yes, thank you. That was great. So you talk about, go where your readers are at, and I'm more like you. Like my series is called Magic in Miami. It's very lighthearted. I have a magical flamingo. No
Nice.
no dark. No, the dark is not that dark. It's light and fluffy. So where are those urban fantasy readers?
On Facebook.
Basically?
Everyone's on Facebook.
Except for the young people.
Except for the
Well, except for the really
They're on
young
TikTok.
people. So unless you're pitching at the really young people, yes.
Yeah.
And TikTok works well, but yeah.
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 Other answers?
I was going to say, I can tell you what authors to target, like R.J. Blaine, target her.
To write
She's
this
pretty
down.
cool, I've heard.
Yeah, well, hers is very light and fluffy and funny and crack. So the problem is I think because I can't just go, oh, magically, this row is your people. You have to do it by trying to target the people who are reading stuff like what you're writing. So you can do that via BookBub ads is really good for doing that. They're just expensive. That's honestly, I mean, put it this way, if we knew exactly how to answer that question, I would have 7 figures.
All right. Thank you for your
Thank you.
question. Do you have a question?
Yes. I understand that a lot of urban fantasy takes place in cities in the U.S. or, London occasionally, things like that. Do you think that it's marketable to have it take place in a city elsewhere, say Vancouver, BC, Halifax, Berlin? I mean, I know you can do it, but is it marketable?
I have books set in Bremen in Germany. They sell just as well as anything else. I don't think it matters where they are. In fact, I think using diverse locations would probably work better.
Yeah, I mean, all over the place. I would only say that I think that it's really fun for wish fulfillment to put things in places where people want to go. And I like places that are instantly recognizable. I've blown up the Louvre in my books and demolished the pyramids because, I mean, that's something that people could recognize. Any other answers on this?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see stuff like that because, okay, I have never been to Brisbane, Australia. So if somebody writes a story there, I'm going to be like, well, cool. Especially if they're talking about, local food that's there or stuff because it lets me at least do a little bit of traveling to someplace, even if I know, Brisbane may not have a dragon on every street corner, you're still going to talk about things. There's no difference in marketing, because I can guarantee you, I have never picked up a book because the location is in the US or the location is in Germany. I pick up a book because, oh, that plot sounds interesting. The location just helps make it richer. Like if they're doing it in Northern California, where I grew up, I'm going to be like, oh, cool, an Easter egg for me. It's never going to drive my buying power.
Yeah, great answer. Any other answers?
I'd say it's more important that it's a location you can describe well.
Yeah.
Because you have to make it believable. So I've got one set in a Scottish castle because I wanted to go on a castle tour and write it off. So I was like...
You expensed it. That's
I
amazing.
expensed it. So I set it in a castle.
I did the same thing. And literally in Scotland. Anybody else? Okay, you have a question? Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead. We'll get back
From
to
a
both of y'all.
marketing description perspective, I write opposite of grimdark, so again, the lighthearted, but trying to describe it is very difficult. Is there some ways that you've found that works that is more on the PG-13? There's no violence, there's no sex, well, there's no graphic violence.
Clean, sweet, and fluffy are the key words.
Okay.
Ooh,
Has anybody coined the term cozy urban fantasy yet?
I was
I would love
going
that.
there, but I didn't know whether or not that was a thing yet, or in terms
you
of
doing that?
describing the tone, because it's not, while it might be, it's so not coming of age, like, it's not a YA from that perspective, so I was just curious how some of the others have been able to get across that.
I would think you would have.
Well, so to answer your question, I also write a lot of cozy mystery, which sells really well, and so I'm blending my audiences. The first book is called Kentucky Fried Dragon. I have the cover. I'm yet to write it, but it's essentially what you're talking about. It's a cozy mystery set in an urban fantasy world.
Right. Cute. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's when you did the Scooby-Doo thing, and now the Kentucky Fried. I mean, you know what you're getting right there, and it's such a fast sales pitch. If you can sell it in an elevator, you can sell it. Is there one from
Online.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from persons in the audience, I have one that says, is there a scope for older main characters rather than young, nubile 20-somethings? I know there's been a niche for midlife and paranormal romance, but I'm thinking griftier, snarkier urban fantasy.
Short answer, yes. You see people in the Facebook groups asking for it, especially 40s to 60s kind of range. They want to read someone their age.
Fabulous. And one more. If witches, werewolves, and vampires are in urban fantasy, what is considered paranormal?
Well, to answer the first question, my series starts with the character at 19. It ends with her in her late 30s to 40s, so she actually does age as she goes around. As far as I can tell, paranormal is just more of the spooky, and it's almost always paranormal romance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I've seen too, is it seems like paranormal, people expect a romance element in it more than urban fantasy.
Any other answers on either one of those questions for the age or witches?
Okay, I don't have any young characters.
Okay,
I'm
there
under
you go.
30, apart from a couple of minor characters that come along. All of my central protagonists are middle-aged and upwards.
Okay, so I mean, you can do what you want with urban fantasy, and people will read it. Mine start young, and they never age, and they never gain any weight because I do wish fulfillment. No, like literally, their magic system is calorie based, and so they have to eat like hamburgers in order to do magic. But that's because my readers are the ones that I've polled are a lot of them are disabled, they're retired. They use my books in order to feel alive, and they want to read about somebody that is young and vibrant and wonderful, and why not? You have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, you spoke about sharing universes with other authors, and I know Amazon used to have Amazon Worlds, so how are you handling that now?
So, Talia, you were talking about doing that, and I know Steve does it too.
Essentially, you're kind of acting as a publisher. You're publishing them and splitting the royalties.
Okay.
Yeah, do you have any input on that?
No, exactly the same. Yeah, and they, well, yeah, exactly that. So the manuscript is provided to me by the author. and I put the cover on it, and I publish it, and do everything. We split the royalties.
Yeah.
It operates essentially as a spin-off from the original series.
Nice.
It's like having CSI. That's what it is. The original CSI series was so popular. How many of those did they make? And they're still doing it with Rookie and 911 and FBI and goodness knows what else. So it's really no different to that.
Okay, good answer. And we're all out of time, but thank you guys so much, and thank you guys for sharing your knowledge.